I came across your podcast, which it's kind of aligned with the sort of work that I do in general. Although from your point of view, obviously you're a journalist. I'm a tech entrepreneur, but I'm sort of I'm trying to be one of the good guys, right? I was part of the problem. Now I'm trying to be part of the solution in the world of AI. So I agree with you that we as a human society globally, we pretty much kind of fuck things up. And AI sort of makes it even worse today. And obviously we can delve deeper into that. But I know that I'm sure you're getting a lot of people, because I'm getting these sort of people all the time that say, Tim, crisis, what crisis? Oh, Tim, you're being hyperbolic, or you just don't like VCs, or yada, 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 which I'm like, no. So to kind of put that to bed and get real, why is Earth on crisis? I know you get this question 5 billion times, but it's just for the listeners, just to make sure.
So there's one caveat I would mention. We are not in crisis because of human society. It's a very small fraction of human society that is causing enormous amounts of pollution and putting stress on the Earth systems due to resource extraction. And that also is not necessarily like the fault of malicious intent or demonic people, but rather typically when organisms have access to a dense energy source, they do more activity. And for the last almost 200 years, coming up to 200 years, we've had access to fossil fuels, which are incredibly energy dense, second only to nuclear, and that have just, put human development, and I don't use that term in the sort of typical word, but the development of human civilization into third gear and just accelerated. Also, fossil fuels were coupled with capitalism, which is an economic system that was meant to be used for growth. That was what Adam Smith wrote in The Wealth of Nations, and also did warn this is a system that is only meant to develop quickly for growth, and then it's meant to transition into something else because it's fundamentally limited. You cannot just continue to exist with growth. Now, what we see when we understand that from like a materials perspective is that there's lots of literature to show that our economies are only really a measurement of how much material we're extracting from the planet. So if you think about GDP, that's kind of like a measurement of damage, essentially. And because there were only 2 billion of us 100 years ago, it kind of looked like Earth was limitless. Obviously the planet is finite, but God, so many trees to cut down and so much oil to pull up and so much gas to extract, and so much stuff to build. And now we're running out. And we're not running out in the sense that tomorrow it's going to be all gone, but we're running out in the sense that because of everything we're extracting, we've changed Earth systems to the point that she can no longer regenerate in her cycles to kind of absorb the damage that we're doing and maintain stability. So that is why the planet is in crisis. Sort of combination of energy, available energy, economic system, human impetus, and waste. And we're now in a stage where we need to be actively regenerating the Earth system so that she can continue to absorb the pollution that we're putting out. We need to be actively reducing the amount of pollution that we're putting out. We need to grapple with the fact that for all the talk of wealth and development and capitalism and GDP, the growth of national economies is decoupled from material well-being for people. It did so, I think, after 2008. So it's just not translating into what it was all originally meant to be for, allegedly, which is, to lift people up out of poverty. That's just no longer the case. And it does seem to be madness to be continuing with something that benefits very few at the expense of quite literally the only planet in the known universe that supports life. Yeah. So there's also that element of like, we're in a political crisis and a crisis of imagination. Like we really need to grasp that is the reality of the situation. We're going to screw up our planet for what now?
Greed.
Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as greed though, because I think greed kind of predicates like a moral behavior, and I don't think there's much to do with it. I don't think there's much about this that is to do with morality. I think that it's a biological impetus, right? to seek an energy surplus, because if you think about the human body, like you need a certain amount of calories just to function every day. Like if I was to lie down, like not get out of bed, be horizontal and just breathe, I think my basal rate is like, I don't know, 1200, 1400 calories. So I need that just to maintain myself. And then I need extra in order to then do things. Like you need energy in order to spend energy, because you can't create energy out of nothing. So it's very normal for creatures to seek an energy surplus. And predators tend to seek surpluses in like bigger chunks. Like herbivores will just graze all day. It's kind of like they're eating lots of little batteries throughout the day, whereas predators will kind of eat like one big battery a week or 2 weeks or, a month on a bad month. So it's just kind of how like biology functions. And the problem with human beings is we got access to the biggest battery in the world and didn't think about what was happening with the energy that we were using from it, essentially. So, for example, fossil fuels, most of the energy, or a third of the energy from fossil fuels is released into the atmosphere as heat. Right? We're not even using them efficiently. And when you release that amount of energy, carbon, whatever it is, into a system, it's going to then destabilize the system.
Yeah.
So there's obviously elements of greed when we're talking about, the fact that capitalism incentivizes like neoliberalism incentivizes individualism and capitalism incentivizes protecting the bottom line. But I think it's a really dangerous ploy to blame this on morality when there's a lot more complex stuff going on, and morality is then kind of added on, like amorality is then added on to the top. And I think that's a real failure, frankly, of the left in the Western world, to make this about good people and bad people.
That's an interesting point, because effectively people, the climate deniers, right, or the climate change deniers, they do feel somewhat offended if you try to say to them, hey, you're being irresponsible, or that, it's your fault that the planet is dying because you just ignore the scientific facts and stuff. And I'm a scientist, the science is out there. And the one thing, one of the reasons why I walked away from science gazillions of years ago, before I decided to jump into the entrepreneurship abyss, it's the fact that we talk to ourselves too much. It's like we expect people to align with us automatically, so we're not actually, we're not putting the effort to engage. We're just saying, hey, here's the data, just shove it into people's faces and take it. And if you don't like it, then you're a bad person.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. I think this is what brought the current political situation that we're seeing around the world.
Yes and no. I think that it was never scientists' role to be the communicators, right? Like that's why you're meant to have journalists and science journalists and political leaders who are trustworthy, and So this is the thing. Like we're asking a hell of a lot of people who are like, "Hey, do the research and then find the best way to tell people." No, like it's on other people. It's on the narrative and the storytellers to find the best way to explain the science. And then those people have an uphill battle, because you have, an entire sort of like mainstream media propaganda machine that, first of all, it has like very serious ties to government that is funded by the fossil energy industry. And also has to kind of, how do I put this? Like, isn't particularly good at understanding complexity, because that's not been, how news has developed as a sector. And you've got non-scientists trying to understand very complex science, and then also infantilizing their audience, thinking they can't understand it, and so dumbing it down. So I really don't think it's like scientists' fault to say that people aren't understanding the data. Like we have different data on this that shows that people, it's only about 10% of the population that trust facts when they hear new facts. And then another 20% of the population trust emotional responses. And then the rest, they believe information because it comes from a person that they trust. And that's why you have, people like Donald Trump who can go out and lie objectively, but whose fan base still believes them because he's already developed, trust with them, essentially. So there's a lot of different moving parts, but I do think that it's taken certainly the climate movement a long time to realize, numbers don't do it. for people. We're going to have to find something else. And the left is still massively grappling with not insulting people that disagree with them, because you just can't. You absolutely can't. It's such a failure.
It's frustrating. I mean, this is why I try not to be politically attached to any particular movement. I mean, I see myself as a liberal. I believe in progress, etc. But I suppose I see it from the point of view of an innovator, technologist, entrepreneur, where basically I try to bring new things to make the world a better place. I'm one of the old school tech entrepreneurs that actually genuinely believed in that. Until, of course, the capitalists who call themselves capitalists, I call them digital feudalists, because that's what they're doing right now is not capitalism. We can delve into that as well. But no, I feel, no, you're right. I mean, the media has a huge role to play, because actually my proper AI career, like what rose me to my position, was my second startup, or third startup, I can't remember which one now, is the one that got us into Google Campus alongside the likes of DeepMind and basically the who of AI. So I was part of that cohort. So that's back in 2012, 13. And I can assure you that we were not building AI to make some kind of AGI bullshit, right? That's bullshit. There's no such thing as AGI. I'll tell you this right now. I'm telling to the listeners, there's no AGI, all right? Just forget that nonsense. But, but generally we tried to solve problems. So I remember there was a startup that was trying to use AI to figure out, basically, I can't remember, it was like to use the AI algorithms to figure out how do we potentially prevent climate change or reduce climate change. Obviously, DeepMind, they were using AI to solve scientific problems. And so my startup, the main reason I'm talking about this, we were actually using AI to fight misinformation and deepfakes. That was already a problem in 2012. That it was already there. I sort of discovered it in 2010, and I prioritized science in the sense of how scientific information, especially in healthcare, is completely skewed into all sorts of weird directions caused by the mainstream media. And the thing that I used to pitch to VCs at the time, that the source of the misinformation isn't social media, it's the mainstream media. Now, whether it's intentional or not, you can tell me that, I don't know. But for me, I think it's more to do with the fact that it's clickbaity. The titles don't necessarily correlate with the content, etc. But people, as you say, they don't read the content. They see the title, they get emotional about it. They get some kind of an emotional judgment of reality, which is not necessarily real, and it just brews into the disaster we see today. So I see your point, like the media are to blame as well. But for me, I feel that it's a complicated ecosystem. Maybe right now it's way more complicated. It's like, where do we find the solution? What is the route to solve that misunderstanding that the public have about, climate change, any other crisis for that matter? Get politics out of it, I presume?
Well, that's a big question. And I don't believe in solutions, right? I believe that systems evolve and shift. Because solutions sounds too much like a kind of steady state. I don't think that mainstream media is a source of misinformation. I think that it's not quite correct to say that, a kind of headline which is serving its purpose of like grabbing attention is feeding misinformation. You have to remember that the media is held to an incredibly high standard with regards to laws and regulations and libel suits and all of this kind of thing. And I think part of kind of the stranglehold of the fear of being wrong when you have a bunch of non-experts writing about expert stuff is that what actually happened is they sort of developed this two-sided manner when reporting on science, which was okay, this person says that, but this person says that. And that kind of gets them off the hook and ensures that they can't get done for bias, essentially. And then that creates the possibility of misinformation, because you can then begin to decontextualize a report. And I think probably that is part of the answer to your question. Like, we live in a hugely decontextualized world. And I think that that is reflective of the neoliberal economic system, which has sought to sort of separate us and cut ties and create a dog-eat-dog world where individuals rule supreme, which is completely ecologically blind and misinformed. Like, we all exist as interdependent beings, whether socially, politically, environmentally, ecologically, etc. But because of the amount of information that's out there now, it's impossible to consume all of it. It's impossible to keep up. And so I think part of what people do is to survive is like decontextualize in a sense. And then also because it is, media thinks of itself as it being kind of impossible to properly contextualize each story, then we've kind of fallen into a glut where the real bias isn't what is being said, but is what is being not said. And I think that's kind of the tragedy of the commons here, that the web, the social and political and economic web is still there, but it's been hidden essentially in a hall of mirrors, or it's been, we've been made blind to it. And that's why you have case after case after case after case of corruption happening. And each time it's kind of treated as like a new thing. Like I remember thinking about this a few years ago when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister in the UK, and like the news cycle was just constant outrage. And I was like, this is ridiculous. What a stupid way to report on this. Like, this is what he does. He does illegal things and he says stupid things. And the more that we treat each instance as an opportunity for outrage, the more that we decontextualize it. This is actually his normal behavior. And because outrage adds an element of like, oh, it shouldn't be this way. No, it shouldn't be this way, but it is this way. So stop being outraged. Stop kind of wasting time with this emotional response and start contextualizing that this is a very deliberate manner of governing that he is weaponizing here. And you
he
need
even
to
said it.
connect all the dots. I mean, and he even said it, right? So, yeah, I think contextualizing is very important to understanding why the world is in crisis and what to do about it.
You are listening